People always told me I was too soft for this world. Maybe they were right. But softness doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it just means you still care, even when no one cares back. My name is Ayana, and I live in a small town on the edge of nowhere, where everyone knows your business, and your worth is measured by the car you drive or the size of your house. I drive a 2009 Honda Civic, worth maybe $5,000. It rattles every time I hit a bump. The air conditioning breathes like an old man, and the paint on the door is peeling from too many summers in the sun. But it's mine. I paid for it myself. Every dent, every scratch, every imperfection feels like a chapter of my story. To my family, though, it's an embarrassment. My brother Noah runs a tech startup in the city. He drives a Tesla and wears confidence like armor. My sister Brielle married into money. She posts pictures from her marble kitchen and rooftop dinners like her life is a magazine spread. And then there's me, the art teacher, the unmarried one, the one with potential that never seemed to turn into something profitable. At every family gathering, Noah and Brielle somehow turned my life into their favorite punchline. Last Thanksgiving, Noah had looked at my car keys on the counter and smirked. "Still driving that old Civic?" I smiled tightly. "Yeah, it runs fine," he chuckled. "You know, Aya, your car has more wrinkles than Mom's face," Mom gasped. "Noah!" But even she laughed a little. I laughed too, because it was easier than crying. Truth is, I love my job. I teach art at a public school, and every time I watch a kid's eyes light up when they mix colors for the first time, I remember why I chose this life. Money doesn't buy that feeling, but love doesn't pay bills either. My apartment is small, one bedroom, creaky floors, the smell of paint always lingering in the air. My students' drawings hang on my fridge, bright and messy, like they believe in me more than my own family does. Every morning, I drive my little Civic to school. The engine hums, the sunlight catches the dashboard dust, and I whisper, "Let's make it another day." And somehow we do. My mother tries to stay neutral in everything my tagrifoi. She loves us all, but her silence is a loyalty of its own. Sometimes she calls and says, "Ayana, you should visit more. Your siblings worry about you." I laugh softly. "They don't worry, Mom. They judge." She sighs. "They just want what's best for you." "What's best for me," I reply, "might not be what's best for them." The conversation always ends with her saying, "You'll understand when you're older." But I'm 30 now. I think I understand just fine. Despite everything, I still show up. Birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. I drive my old car to their fancy houses and pretend their luxury doesn't make me feel small. At the table, Noah talks about investors, Brielle about vacation homes. I sit quietly, sipping water, nodding like I belong there. One night, Brielle asked, "Aya, don't you ever get tired of being broke?" I looked at her. Polished nails, diamond earrings, her world so shiny it barely looked real. "Not as tired as I'd get pretending to be someone I'm not," I said softly. She laughed. Always the poet. But her eyes rolled, as if sincerity were a weakness she couldn't afford. Sometimes I wonder if I'm foolish for still craving their approval, for still hoping that one day they'll see the beauty in the simplicity I've chosen. But deep down, I think I just want to be respected. Not for my salary, not for my car, but for the person I am. That hope keeps me coming back to them, even when I leave every gathering feeling smaller than before. A week before Mom's 60th birthday, she called. "I'm planning something special," she said. "Brielle's hosting dinner at her place. You'll come, right?" "Of course," I said. "Good." She smiled through the phone. "Everyone will be there." I didn't know then that everyone would include a handful of Brielle's wealthy friends, people who'd look at me the same way my siblings did, like charity that forgot to be grateful. Still, I promised I'd go. I even washed my car that morning, scrubbing off every mark of dust like it could make me more presentable. As the water slid down its old silver frame, I caught my reflection in the glass. Tired, yes, but not defeated. I whispered, "We've come this far. We'll survive one more dinner." That evening, I laid out my best outfit, a simple floral dress, hand-painted earrings from one of my students, and shoes that had seen better days. As I got into my car, I turned the key and the engine sputtered twice before starting. "Come on, girl," I said, patting the dashboard. "Don't embarrass me tonight." The car coughed, then roared to life. I smiled. "Atta girl." The sun was setting as I drove through the hills toward Brielle's mansion. The road shimmered in gold, my little car humming along. For a brief moment, I felt free, untouched by their judgments, proud of how far I'd come on my own terms. But as I turned into Brielle's driveway, the Civic made a choking sound, then another, then stopped completely. No, 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 I muttered, turning the key again and again. Nothing. The driveway was long, surrounded by luxury cars, Teslas, BMWs, and a Range Rover with a custom plate that said Queen Bee. My old Honda sat dead center, like a punchline waiting to be delivered. I closed my eyes. Not tonight, please. But the car stayed silent. Headlights appeared behind me, Noah's Tesla, gliding smooth and quiet. He honked twice, impatient. I stepped out, forcing a smile. He rolled down the window. Having trouble? I nodded weakly. Yeah, she died on me. He smirked. Maybe she's just embarrassed to be seen here. Brielle's laughter echoed from the front porch. Is that Aya? Oh my God, did her car break down in the driveway? Heat rushed to my face. I felt small again, smaller than ever. I didn't answer. I just forced my Civic into neutral, pushed it to the side, and whispered under my breath, It's okay, just get through tonight. But deep inside, I could feel something cracking, a quiet fracture in the part of me that still hoped they'd ever see me as equal. That dinner would change everything, I just didn't know it yet. I can still hear the laughter from that night. It was light, effortless, the kind that stings because it doesn't see you as human, just as a punchline. By the time I walked into Brielle's house, my palms were still greasy from trying to fix the car with a napkin I'd found in my glove box. My dress was creased, my hair frizzed from the humidity, and my heart was already halfway to breaking. The chandelier above the dining hall looked like something out of a magazine, gold, shimmering, impossibly clean. Every plate, every fork, every glass screamed perfection. I felt like a blotch on the canvas. Brielle's voice cut through the hum of background music. Look who finally made it. Did the Civic survive the climb, or did you have to push it? People laughed. I forced a smile. She made it. Barely. Noah leaned back in his chair, glass of wine in hand. You know, Aya, at this point, you could probably sell that car for scrap and use it as a down payment for a bike. Laughter again, sharper this time. Even Mom smiled nervously. Come on, don't tease her, let's just eat. But no one stopped. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, picking at my food. The room buzzed with stories about investments, travel, and designer renovations. I felt like a ghost haunting the wrong family. Brielle leaned toward me, pretending to whisper. You know, there's this company that helps people trade in old cars. They take charity cases, too. Her friend snickered. I laughed softly, the kind of laugh that hides the tremor in your throat. Maybe I'll call them. Do that, she said, sipping her wine. It'll save us all the embarrassment at the next dinner. I looked toward Mom, silently pleading for her to intervene, but she just stirred her soup, eyes fixed on the bowl. That hurt more than the teasing. I stared down at my plate. The silverware gleamed so brightly it almost mocked me. My reflection in the spoon looked unfamiliar, small, defeated, silent. Halfway through dinner, Brielle announced, Guess what, everyone? We're thinking of buying a vacation home in Aspen. Cheers erupted. She turned to me. You've been there, right, Aya? Oh, wait, I forgot. You're more of a small town kind of girl. Something inside me snapped. I looked up, voice trembling but steady. You're right. I can't afford Aspen, but at least my happiness doesn't depend on the square footage of a house. The laughter stopped, just for a second. Then Noah smirked. Relax, Aya. No one's attacking you. It's called joking. You should try laughing more. Maybe I would, I said quietly, if the jokes weren't always about me. The silence that followed was heavy. Even Brielle looked taken aback, like she'd never expected me to talk back. Mom cleared her throat. Let's not fight. It's a celebration. I set my fork down. A celebration of what, Mom? Pretending? Mocking people who don't fit into your picture of success? Her eyes hardened. Ayana, please! That's when I realized my family didn't just misunderstand me. They pitied me, and pity is worse than hate. After dinner, while everyone moved to the living room for cake, I slipped outside. The air was cold, and the sound of their laughter leaked through the windows like ghosts I couldn't escape. I walked to my car. There it sat, quiet, faithful, old. The same car they mocked, the same one that had carried me to work every day, through rain and heartbreak, through years of scraping by and still showing up. I rested my hand on the hood. You and me, I whispered. We're not shiny, but we show up. The door creaked open behind me. It was Brielle. She crossed her arms. You didn't have to make a scene in there, you know? I turned to her slowly. I didn't make a scene, Brielle. I defended myself. She scoffed. Defended? Aya, we were just teasing. You're always so sensitive? Maybe that's because your teasing stopped being funny years ago, I said, voice breaking. Every word you say cuts. Every laugh chips away at me. She rolled her eyes. Oh, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I stepped closer. You humiliate me in front of your friends, call it love, and expect me to laugh along. That's not love. That's cruelty dressed as concern. Brielle's face stiffened. You're jealous, Ayana. That's all this is. Jealous, I whispered. Of what? A marriage built on status? A house that echoes because there's no real warmth inside? No, Brielle, I'm not jealous. I'm disappointed. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't wait for any. I walked past her, got into my car, and shut the door. The engine groaned as I turned the key. It coughed twice, then started. I looked up at her through the windshield, her perfect posture framed by the glow of the mansion's lights. And for the first time, I didn't see a sister. I saw a stranger. As I drove away, my chest tightened. The streetlights blurred into streaks of gold and white as tears filled my eyes. I could still hear Noah's laughter echoing in my head. It's just a joke, Aya. But it wasn't. It never was. By the time I reached home, I couldn't stop crying. I sat in my car, the night pressing against the windows, and whispered into the silence. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'll never be enough. The tears came harder. My hands trembled against the steering wheel. That night something in me broke, not loudly but quietly, like a branch snapping deep in the woods where no one hears it. I turned off the ignition, sat in the dark, and stared at the faint reflection of my face in the mirror. Then I said it out loud for the first time. I'm done trying to be seen by people who refuse to look. What I didn't know yet was that this breaking point wasn't my ending. It was the beginning of something much greater. The start of a fire that would one day light the very path they mocked me for walking. The days after that dinner felt like falling through water, heavy, slow, suffocating. I stopped painting. I stopped showing up early for work. Even my morning coffee lost its warmth. Everything felt muted, as if the colors had drained out of my world. Every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear Brielle's laughter, sharp and polished. I could see Noah's smirk, the way he leaned back in his chair as if mocking me was a family tradition. And worst of all, I remembered Mom's silence, the way she didn't look up, didn't defend me, didn't even flinch when they humiliated me. That silence was louder than all their laughter combined. I tried to distract myself at school, but my students noticed. Miss Ayana, are you sad? Little Emma asked one afternoon, her tiny fingers smudged with paint. I smiled weakly. No, sweetheart, just tired. She nodded thoughtfully. You should paint something happy. My mom says that helps when she cries. Her innocence pierced me. I wished it were that simple. At night, my apartment felt like a museum of failure. Unfinished canvases leaning against the walls, bills stacked on the table, silence sitting in every corner. My Civic sat outside under the dim streetlight, a shadow of loyalty I no longer deserved. Even that car, my old companion, felt like a reminder of how far I hadn't come. Sometimes I'd sit in the driver's seat long after sunset, just staring through the cracked windshield, whispering to no one, maybe they're right. Maybe I am wasting my life. The seat smelled like old leather and paint stains. The steering wheel was cold. It felt like home and a prison. A week later, my car battery died. It was a small thing, but it broke me. I sat there, hands trembling on the wheel, tears burning behind my eyes. Please, I whispered to the car. Not you too. Nothing, just silence. The dam burst. I cried, really cried, for the first time in years. Not just because the car wouldn't start, but because I realized I had no one to call. Noah would mock me. Brielle would roll her eyes. Mom would say, you should have taken better care of it. So I sat there in the dark, sobbing into my hands until the windows fogged over. The truth hit me hard. I had spent so long trying to be part of a family that didn't want me that I'd forgotten who I was without them. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed and took the bus to work. People stared, maybe because I looked like someone who'd forgotten how to belong. Lydia, the cafe owner near my school, noticed right away. "You've been quiet lately," she said, pouring my coffee. "Where's that spark of yours?" I shrugged. "Ran out of fuel, I guess." She studied me for a moment, then said softly, "You can't pour art from an empty heart, Aya. Whatever they took from you, don't let them keep it." Her words lingered, even when I wanted to ignore them. That night, I sat on my couch, scrolling aimlessly through social media. Brielle had posted pictures from a charity gala. Her caption read, "Giving back feels so good." I stared at her smile. Perfect, practiced, fake. How could someone who broke others for fun post about kindness like it was a costume she wore for attention? My thumb hovered over the unfollow button. For the first time, I pressed it. It felt small, but powerful. Then my phone buzzed. A message from Lila, my best friend from college. Lila: "Hey, haven't seen your new paintings in a while. Everything okay?" Me: just uninspired. Lila: "That's not you. Your art kept me going when my mom died." "Aya, don't stop now. The world needs what you create." I stared at her message for a long time. The world needs what you create. No one had said that to me in years. Not my family, not anyone. Something stirred inside me, faint but real. The next day after school, I walked into my art room and stood in front of a blank canvas. The smell of paint thinner hit me like nostalgia. I picked up a brush but couldn't move it. My hand shook. I heard Brielle's voice in my head. "That's cute, Aya, but when will you get a real job?" The brush slipped from my hand. I clenched my fists, took a deep breath, and whispered, "Not today." Then I turned off the lights and walked out. That night, I dreamt of my father. He was sitting beside me in his old truck, smiling like he used to when the world felt simple. He didn't say anything. But when I looked down, there was a paintbrush in my lap. When I woke up, tears streaked my face. I hadn't thought about him in so long. He'd died when I was 20, long before he could see how lost I became. He used to tell me, "You're meant to make beauty out of pain, Ayana. That's your gift." I hadn't made anything beautiful in months, only excuses. The next morning, I made coffee, tied my hair back, and sat by my easel again. The blank canvas still looked intimidating, but less so this time. I dipped my brush into blue and dragged it across the surface, then red, then gold. My hands moved without thinking. The strokes were messy, angry, desperate, but alive. When I finally stopped, I saw it, a storm over a small silver car on an endless road. It was raw, imperfect, but real. I sat there for hours, staring at it, crying and smiling at once. It wasn't art for the world. It was a message to myself. You're still here. You're still trying. That night, as the paint dried, I whispered into the quiet, "I won't let them define me anymore." But deep inside, I knew this wasn't enough. Something bigger had to change. Something inside me had to rise. And when it did, they wouldn't see it coming. I found the canvas by accident. It was shoved behind a stack of old sketchbooks in the closet, the one where I kept things I wasn't ready to look at. The paint was yellowed at the edges, but the brush strokes were my father's, confident, warm, like someone who'd never been afraid to try. On the back of the canvas, in his slanted handwriting, there was a note taped to the frame. I had read it once before, years ago, and then foolishly tucked it away like a secret I didn't deserve. My fingers trembled as I peeled the tape. "Dreams don't die, Ayana. People just stop watering them." I sat down on the closet floor and let that sentence sink through the quiet like rain into dry earth. My chest unclenched in a way it hadn't for weeks. I could almost hear his voice, low, patient, telling me to keep going. I carried the canvas to my tiny studio and placed it on a stand where I could see it every morning. It felt like a small altar, a reminder that someone once believed in me without condition. That night, I called Lila. "Did you find it?" she asked before I could say anything. "Yeah," I said, voice thick. "I found Dad's canvas. His note is still on the back." There was a long, soft silence. "You need to paint again," she said finally. "Not for them. For you. For him." "I don't know if I still can," I admitted. "You can," she said simply. "You always could." Her certainty lit something in me. I cleared the table, squeezed out paints, and made a mess. My first strokes felt clumsy, hands remembering muscles, but with every mark, I felt less like a failure and more like someone coming home. A week later, Lydia from the cafe stopped by the school with a box of muffins and sat in the back of my classroom while the kids painted. "You've been different, Aya," she said, watching as a 7-year-old mixed colors with intense focus. "I've been broken," I said honestly. "And?" she prompted. "And I'm tired of being broken," I said, and the words surprised me with how loud and true they felt. Lydia took a sip of coffee. "Then sell something. Put it out there. People like stories." "They like heart." I laughed, a small sound that felt like a cough. "My heart's not exactly marketable. It's covered in paint and old receipts," she shrugged. "People buy honesty." So I did something I'd been too afraid to try. I made a small online shop and posted 3 pieces: quick studies, raw and messy, but honest. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone like a child waiting for a reply. At 2:14 a.m., a message popped up. Buyer. "Love this. It feels like home. I'd like to purchase piece number 2. Can you ship to California?" I sat frozen at my kitchen table. California. My work, the work I'd hidden for years, might travel farther than the front yard of my family's mansion. My hands shook as I typed back. Me. "Thank you. Yes, I can ship. I'll wrap it carefully." Lila called the following morning. "You sold one." I screamed at 3 a.m. in bed like an idiot. I smiled despite myself. "It feels weird. Good weird." "Buyers are people who see what you see," Lila said. "They don't care about your car. They care about what you make." Her words sank in. I wasn't making art to prove them wrong. I was making it so I could breathe. As the weeks went by, small things began to shift. A parent at school commissioned me to paint a mural in the library. I worked nights on off days, lifting crates of paint, scaling ladders. My muscles ached in ways that felt honest and necessary. Every payment went straight into a plain, unlabeled jar I kept on my dresser. I whispered to it like a child, tucking away coins for a secret treat. Car fund. Noah texted me once. "Saw your piece online. Congrats." It was brief. No exclamation points, no follow-up. I didn't respond. Brielle posted a sponsored photo about an upcoming gala. I scrolled past it without stopping. It felt like training, resisting the old reflex to look for the wound. One late evening, a local gallery owner named Marta messaged me after seeing my time-lapse video of repainting my car door. "Marta, I saw your video. There's something honest in the way you fix what's broken. Would you consider a small show at my gallery?" I read the message 3 times, then called Lila, who cried on the phone and said things like, See, it's happening." I called Lydia. I called Marta back and said, voice brittle with disbelief, "Yes, I'd love that." Preparing for the show was both terrifying and freeing. I painted until my hands cramped. I listened to Dad's old mix on repeat. I wrote little notes to myself and taped them above my easel. Keep going. Show up. Breathe. The opening night was modest. 12 people, warm light, red wine. Marta introduced me, and I said a few words, voice barely louder than a whisper. I paint because color keeps me alive. A woman approached me afterward, her hands stained with gallery pamphlets. "Your work made me think of my grandmother," she said. "Home isn't always a place. It's a feeling. I want to buy the piece with the silver car." For a moment, I forgot to breathe. "You mean that one?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes. It reminds me that we can be small and still matter." When she paid, I felt something like validation. Not the shallow kind that comes from proving someone wrong, but the deep kind that comes from being recognized for who you are. I tucked the money into the jar that night, coins clinking like a tiny victory march. At home, I stood by the window and looked at my old Honda under the streetlight. The jar sat on my dresser, half full. The paint on my fingers dried into tough little shells of color. Lila texted, "I'm proud of you. Don't stop." I typed back, "I'm not sure what I am yet, but I'm starting to like the person I'm becoming." That felt truer than anything Noah had ever said. It felt like a promise I made to myself. I still hadn't told Mom about the gallery. I hadn't told Brielle anything. I was doing this quietly, like watering a seed in the dark until it had the nerve to break the soil. The spark was small, but it was steady. And for the first time since that night at Brielle's, I felt a real sense of direction. Something was growing. The first time someone called me inspiring, it felt strange and tender, like a word I'd been saving for myself and found on someone else's lips. After Marta's show, things moved slowly but surely, like tide pulling at the shore. Orders trickled in from strangers who resonated with the honesty in my work. I started teaching weekend workshops at Lydia's Cafe for kids and adults who wanted to paint but didn't know how to start. The room filled with laughter and messy hands, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't the one giving courage. I was passing it along. "Miss Ayana, do you have another canvas?" a boy named Mateo asked one Saturday, clutching a paint-splattered brush. "Always," I said, and watched him smear orange across the sky he was making. His focus reminded me why I taught. He wasn't thinking about cars or status, he was thinking about color and the way it made his heart thump. That winter, a small art supply company reached out, asking if I'd do a short tutorial video on basic techniques. I filmed in my tiny studio, hands in paint, voice shaking at first, then steady. The video didn't make me famous, but it gave me credibility. People messaged me, some with praise, some with stories about how painting helped them through grief. I answered every message because each one felt like proof that my work mattered. Money was still scarce, but the car fund grew. I labeled jars, car fund, rent, materials, and watched as coins and small bills collected. I learned to make do without fancy things. Mending sweaters, shopping clearance frames, reusing canvases when the backing held. It was humbling and honest. I liked it. Noah texted once, then messaged again after seeing an article. Saw the feature. "Good for you." That was all. No warmth, no follow-up. But when Marta emailed to say a collector wanted a commission piece, I felt a thrill that had nothing to do with family approval. It was my work being chosen. Brielle's life filtered through social media like a glossy magazine. She posted pictures from charity brunches and luxury retreats. Once, she tagged Mom in a photo with the caption, "Family first." Mom liked it within minutes. My chest tightened, then eased. Liking pictures had become their way to show love. In public, while in private, words bit and left scars. One afternoon, Noah stopped by my school. I was surprised to see him in the hallway, hands stuffed in his coat pockets, looking smaller than the photos he posted. He cleared his throat. "Saw your mural," he said. "It's good." "Thanks," I said. "The kids love it." He hesitated. "Listen, things have been rough." The investors pulled back. "I didn't want to tell you like that, but I'm trying to figure it out." I felt a constricting mix of pity and old wounds. His text message from months ago felt shallow now, but I kept my voice calm. "Then figure it out, Noah. You always do." He laughed, humorless. "I don't know if I do anymore." We stood in awkward silence, the fluorescent lights humming. I wanted to say, "Remember the way you laughed at my car?" I wanted to say 100 things. Instead, I offered him a small piece of advice I'd learned from painting. "Start with a clean canvas. You can rebuild." He looked at me with something like gratitude. "Thanks, Aya." He left with a quick wave. I watched him go, feeling a tug, not of triumph, but of reckoning. Around that time, my time-lapse video of repainting my Civic's door crossed 50,000 views. People left comments like, "You fixed what was broken. We need to learn that." My inbox filled with messages from people asking about workshops, commissions, even a small magazine interview. Each message felt like a stone laid on a path that led away from the smallness my family insisted on. Money from sales started to matter. Not because I wanted to flaunt it, but because it bought freedom. I replaced a leaky roof in the studio where I taught a few kids. I bought better brushes. I paid a mechanic to tune the Civic so it wouldn't leave me stranded in another driveway. I still made sure every paycheck went partly into the car fund. It became a ritual. I'd whisper to the jar as I added bills, like tucking hope into a pocket. When the jar finally had enough for a sizable down payment, I felt lightheaded, like I was on the edge of something big and terrifying. The small wins changed me. I stood straighter. I stopped softening my voice when my siblings spoke. People at Lydia's Cafe started saying, "There's Ayana," like it meant something. I began to accept compliments without minimizing them. It felt strange and good, but success has a way of testing you. The more I grew, the more I saw cracks in other people's armor. Noah's texts became sparser than urgent. Brielle's posts grew defensive, like someone trying to make the paint look flawless after it had begun to peel. I didn't celebrate their falls. I watched quietly as the universe sorted itself. One evening, Marta invited me to a small regional exhibit. "It's time people saw more of you," she said, sliding a folded invitation across my table. The gallery was modest, but the turnout was meaningful. I stood by my pieces, watching strangers study the brushwork, listening to them interpret the story I'd lived. A woman with silver hair took me aside and said, "Your painting of the little car. It made me think of resilience. I'm sorry I judged someone like that once. Her apology landed in me like a healing touch. That night, as I locked up my studio, the cold air bit at my cheeks. I looked at my Civic, parked like an old companion, and felt gratitude that surprised me. The car had been more than a vehicle. It had been a classroom for my stubbornness, a mirror for my persistence. I patted the hood, whispering, "We're getting there." Inside, the jar on my dresser glinted under the lamp. The car fund felt less like a symbol and more like the result of small, steady choices. I thought of Dad's note again. People just stop watering them. I realized I'd been watering my dream every week, even when it was painful. As the city slept, I sat at my easel and sketched the outline of a car, not my Civic, not a Tesla, but a silhouette on a horizon. It felt like a map I was finally learning to read. There was still a long road ahead, and the next bend might be sharp. But for the first time since that night at Brielle's, I felt capable of steering. It's strange how life balances itself, not with thunder or fanfare, but with quiet, inevitable shifts, like water finding its level. One rainy afternoon, Mom called me. Her voice sounded thin, like someone had taken the color out of it. "Aya, have you heard from Noah?" she asked. "No." "Why?" I wiped paint off my fingers and listened to the rain tap the window. "There's talk at church. Investors pulled out of his round. They're delaying payroll." She hesitated. "I didn't want to worry you, but I thought you should know." I felt my stomach drop, not from schadenfreude, but from the raw knowledge that someone I loved was hurting. Noah had been unkind, sheer, but cruelty doesn't make you immune to pain. "Mom, I'm sorry," I said. "Have you spoken to him?" "He's quiet," she admitted. "I can hear it in his voice. He's not himself." I did what felt natural. I went to see him. Not to gloat, not to ask for apologies, just to be there in a way he had rarely been for me. His apartment smelled faintly of burnt coffee and stress. He opened the door with a face I hadn't seen since we were kids, tired, hollow-eyed. "Aya," he said. Surprised? "You didn't have to—" "I know," I interrupted, "but I wanted to check on you." He let me in. The living room, once full of prototypes and pitch decks, was scattered with legal letters and spreadsheets. "Investors lost confidence," he said, rubbing his temples. "We didn't hit the metrics. I thought I had more time." I sat on the couch and watched him. For a moment, the past, the jabs at my car, the dinners, seemed very small against the actual weight of his fear. "What do you need?" I asked. He looked at me, vulnerability cutting through his usual pride. "A redesign. I need someone who understands visual storytelling. I know that sounds silly coming from me." "You want help with branding?" I asked, surprised. He nodded. "If you can help, I'll pay you. If not, I don't know what I'll do." The offer stung, not because the money mattered, but because our roles had reversed. "I'll help," I said, "but not for money, for honesty. And so you learn something different this time." He laughed softly, a sound half hopeful. "Promise you won't turn me into a mural." "No promises," I said, and we both smiled, the air shifting a little toward something kinder. While Noah scrambled, Brielle's life frayed in quieter ways. A message from Mom arrived later. "Brielle and Mark are separating. He's asked for a divorce." The words felt like a jolt. I remember the day Brielle married Mark. He was handsome, polished, the sort of man who smiled like a contract. They hosted parties where laughter bounced off marble. I had thought she had everything she wanted. Now, rumors spread. Infidelity. Hidden bank accounts. Frantic late-night calls. Someone had drained a joint account. Lawyers were talking in low, urgent voices. The family text thread went from glossy photos to urgent pleas. Mom's messages were clipped with worry. Noah's were curt. Brielle's were defensive, then quiet. When she called me that night, her voice trembled, brittle with hurt. "Aya, I don't know what to do. I'm scared." My first instinct was to remind her of old jokes, to mock, to hold up the mirror of her cruelty. But watching her voice crack, I felt something unexpected. Compassion. "I'm sorry," I said gently. "Do you need a place to stay?" "No, Mom said I could come home, but I hate feeling small." She laughed then, a broken noise. "Remember when I told you your Civic was tragic? I hate that I did that." "I wish I could take it back." "You can start by being honest," I said. "Start fresh. It's hard, but it's possible." We sat there over the phone, two sisters, one wounded, and one learning to be steady. Neither of us perfect, both of us changing in ways we couldn't have predicted. News spread faster than I expected. A regional arts magazine reached out. Someone at a gallery had mentioned my mural and my time lapse. The journalist wanted to tell a human story about resilience. They called me the night before an interview, speaking in warm, curious tones. "You've turned something ordinary into meaning," she said. "People connect with real life. Can we come by and film your studio?" I agreed. The morning of the piece, I cleaned my studio until fingerprints were almost gone. The cameraman asked me about my old Civic and why I painted it. I told him the truth, because it carried me. I talked about Dad's note, about the jars on my dresser, about the nights I almost quit. When the article published, social media buzzed gently. Messages came in, long, honest, many from strangers who had been teachers or mechanics or mothers who'd felt small in their families. One message caught my eye. It was from a woman who said, "My daughter is in foster care. Your words made me cry. She needs someone who paints the way you do." Another was from a small boutique in California asking to host a pop-up show. The universe rewarded small, steady faith. I didn't do anything dramatic. I showed up. I watered the seed. The seed began to sprout. Now and then, I'd catch a glimpse of my family's reaction. Brielle liked the article on her feed but didn't comment. Noah forwarded the link to a group chat with a single line. "Not bad." Mom called, voice damp with pride. "Aya, I read it," she said. "I'm proud of you." There was sincere relief in her words. "We're proud." I felt the compliment like sunlight, warm, but not enough to melt old ice completely. Still, it mattered. It's important to say this. When the scales begin to tip, I didn't dance on anyone's fall. Karma, if you want to call it that, moved quietly. It was not my instrument. It was life rearranging itself, sometimes painfully. One evening, Brielle came by to collect a box of things from Mom's house. She hesitated in my doorway, swallowing hard. "I saw the article," she said. I'm sorry for the things I said." Her apology was small, fumbling, but honest. "You don't have to explain," I told her. "Start with being better. That's enough for now." She left, shoulders hunched, not yet whole. That winter, as the rain returned and the city lights blurred into watercolor, I sat in my studio and looked at the jar on my dresser. The car fund clinked softly when I nudged it. It was fuller than it had ever been. Noah called one night, voice quieter than before. "Aya, can you look over a concept? I don't want to mess it up." I took the call and walked him through some ideas. He listened, asked questions, took notes. For the first time, he sought guidance without sarcasm. When we hung up, I felt a curious peace. The world wasn't fixed. Brielle still had a long road. Noah still had to rebuild. But the tone around us had shifted, like a chord resolving into something softer. And in the quiet that followed, I whispered to the car parked below my window. We kept going. They're learning. We're still here. Sometimes karma isn't dramatic. Sometimes it's a quiet lesson that shows itself in the way people call at night, honestly asking for help. Sometimes it's the slow return of what you deserve when you refuse to stop. Thanksgiving felt different the year the tide started to turn. There was a quiet tension in the house, like the moment before a storm. Not angry thunder, but heavy, electric air. I drove in through the same long driveway that had once felt like a runway for their judgments. This time, my hands didn't shake. Mom greeted me at the door with a hug that lasted a beat too long. "I'm glad you came," she said, voice cautious. Inside, the table looked familiar. Candles, folded napkins, too much food. But the faces around it were softened by worry. Noah's eyes were rimmed in dark circles. Brielle's smile seemed stretched thin. For once, they didn't launch into brags about travel or money. Their conversation felt careful. When they finally all turned to me, I realized how natural it was for me to expect hostility. I braced for jokes, for the old pattern. Instead, Nick, Brielle's brother-in-law, made a clumsy attempt at small talk and then went quiet. The silence sat like a mirror. Everyone could see their reflection. Mom reached across and squeezed my hand. "Aya," she said, "we read your interview. You've done well." There was pride there, soft and real, but also something like guilt. Brielle cleared her throat. "Aya, She stopped. The words fell and then retreated. "I know I said awful things," she admitted finally. "I laughed with people I thought were my friends. I didn't think about how it sounded. I'm sorry." Noah looked at his hands. I was thoughtless. I thought everything would fix itself. I didn't see you." His voice broke on the last word. I felt a wash of emotions. anger, relief, a fatigue that had deep roots. "You didn't see me," I echoed. "You made jokes about my car, my job, my life, and you called it humor, but it felt like punishment." Brielle's face crumpled. "I know, I thought we were being funny, and I didn't check whether it hurt." Mom's eyes filled. "We protected the image we wanted, not the daughter we had," she said quietly. "I'm sorry." Her apology carried the weight of years. Noah swallowed. "Do you want me to say sorry and move on? Because I can say it. I'm sorry." His apology sounded practiced at first, like a coat he was putting on to keep warm. But then it softened, more honest. "I was cruel." I watched them unpack themselves, expose their mistakes. It was painful to sit through, but also necessary. I had imagined this moment 1,000 ways, shouted words, dramatic exits, a final mic drop. Instead, it was messy and human and slow. That was more honest than any theatrical revenge I'd dreamed. "What do you want?" Brielle asked suddenly, desperation cracking her voice. "What can I do to fix this?" I looked at her, at Noah, at Mom, and then at myself. The anger that had fueled me felt different now. I wasn't interested in making them suffer. I wanted something steadier. Boundaries, respect, the truth. "You can start by listening," I said. "Not defending me, not making excuses. Just listen, and stop using my life as your entertainment." Brielle nodded, tears tracking her makeup. "I can do that." Noah met my eyes. "If you'll help me with the rebrand, I'd be grateful. And not just because I need it. I want to learn how to see things differently." A soft laugh escaped me. "You want lessons from the girl you mocked? That's rich." I felt the old bite of sarcasm, but I swallowed it. "Do it, Noah. Learn. I'll help if you're willing to change how you treat people along the way." He exhaled. "I will." The room felt lighter, or perhaps it was just that the heaviness had shifted into work, the long, patient work of rebuilding. We ate the roasted chicken and passed the potatoes with the tentative politeness of people beginning to repair something fragile. After dinner, we moved into the living room. The kids watched a movie while the adults sat in a circle, like adults do when they have to be honest. Brielle pulled her knees to her chest and spoke haltingly about shame and pride, about the emptiness behind all those Instagram smiles. She admitted to feeling like she'd been playing a role for a long time. "I thought if I looked okay, everything would be okay," she said. "But it wasn't. I hurt people. I hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness overnight." "You don't get to expect anything," I replied. "But I appreciate that you can say it." Mom wiped her eyes. "We lost sight of what matters. Money became the measure. We forgot that kindness is the real currency." Noah added, "We saw your Civic as a symbol of failure, when really it was a symbol of resilience. I didn't understand that." His confession felt heavy, but true. The honesty in the room wasn't a cure. Apologies don't erase years of habit, but it was the first step. And for the first time since that humiliating night at Brielle's house, I felt like my family was listening. Later, when it was just me and Mom in the kitchen, she poured tea and sat across from me. "I'm sorry for not protecting you," she said, voice small. "I thought I was defending the children who had to find their way. I should have stood up for you." "You did what you could," I said softly. "But you can do more now." She nodded, tears brimming. "Teach me how, Aya." I reached across and took her hand. "Start by not laughing when someone else is hurting. Start by asking questions instead of assuming. Start by seeing me for me." She squeezed my hand back. "I will." As I left that night and walked to my car, the driveway looked different. Not because the houses were different, but because something inside me had shifted. I was no longer a passive recipient of their opinions. I had a voice that mattered to them now. I climbed into my Civic and sat for a moment, the engine humming to life like an old friend greeting me. The night air smelled like rain and possibility. I breathed deeply and whispered, "We've done the hardest part. We talked." Then quietly and with a small, fierce hope, I added, "Now we have to build the rest." There's a strange silence that follows the crash of something that once seemed unbreakable. For months, Noah's texts had been short, then infrequent. I heard the details in pieces: missed payroll, angry investors, a lawsuit filed by a partner. He came to the studio one gray morning, looking like the snip of a man who used to stand tall in glossy photos. "I tried to save it," he said, voice raw. "We didn't see the legal issue until it was too late. I thought I could talk my way out of it, but the creditors, they don't care about charm. I sat opposite him at my little work table, paint staining both our hands from a workshop earlier that morning. "What do you need?" I asked. He swallowed. "A design for a public statement, a piece that shows we're trying to make amends. I don't want to hide anymore. He broke off. Pride had been his armor. Now he moved with a humility that felt both foreign and necessary. I helped him, not out of pity, but because he was still my brother. We brainstormed language that didn't excuse, visuals that didn't distract. He listened, genuinely, like a student. That scene, that role reversal, lingered in my chest as a strange relief. Brielle's collapse shook the family in more personal ways. Divorce proceedings dragged, and the details became public. The drained accounts, the canceled charity events, the whispered rumors. Mark moved out. Brielle moved back in with Mom, carrying with her the fragile dignity of someone who'd lost a world she'd polished to a shine. One evening, she knocked on my studio door. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, hair unwashed, mascara streaked. "I don't want to be a charity case," she said the moment I opened the door. "You're not," I replied. "You're my sister," she laughed, a wet, brittle sound. "I never heard you say that when I made fun of your car. You'd let it be a joke for years." Her words landed like a stone. "I'm sorry," I said. "I didn't say it because I thought you knew, but I'll say it now. You are my sister." She stared at me as if hearing a new language. "What if I need help, money, a place to sleep?" "You can stay at Mom's," I said. "I'll help you find work, but I won't fix what you broke with a check." It felt harsh, but fair. Some debts aren't paid with money. The family's public image fractured. Friends who'd once clinked glasses with Brielle now kept distance. Noah's professional network winnowed overnight. Social media that had once amplified their curated perfection now echoed with questions and judgment. I wasn't immune to the changes in their lives. Watching them unravel was painful. Seeing their arrogance soften into fear made me ache for the people beneath the brittle exteriors. But there was a part of me that had been waiting for them to learn the cost of pretending. Karma, if that word sits well for you, arrived not as vengeance but as consequence. Their choices had real fallout. One night, Brielle came to me, eyes hollow. "I need a short-term loan," she said, the words small. My first instinct was to say no. For months I'd rehearsed boundaries. I remembered the laughter, the way they'd used my life as entertainment. I remembered how Mom had watched and said nothing. But I also remembered the girl who used to braid her hair for me when our father worked late, the sister who had once painted with me using water from the garden. Complicated love is still love. "Take it," I said finally. "But this isn't a handout. Let's make a plan. We'll budget, you'll help with my workshops, you'll learn skills. No more pretending," she cried, grateful and ashamed. "I don't deserve it," she whispered. "You do," I said. "We all do. But we need to be honest about how we start again." That night, Mom called me, voice heavy with confession. "I'm sorry I didn't stop them," she said. "I let the fear of losing them, the son who was succeeding, the daughter who married well, keep me quiet. I thought that's how you keep a family together." "You kept an image," I answered, gentle but firm. "Image can't hold a family, people can," she cried into the phone. "How do I make it right?" "You start by listening," I said. "You start by being with them when they are broken, not by shaming them back into who they were." The downfall continued in slow, humiliating ways. Noah started over in a small co-working space, taking freelance gigs and doing late-night coding to make ends meet. Brielle took a temp job at a boutique. Their friends moved on. Some were sympathetic, others were gone. Across town, my little studio hummed with cautious growth. The jar on my dresser finally had enough for a down payment. I started looking at listings with a seriousness I hadn't felt before, not to show off, but to move forward. I pored over budgets and financing, called mechanics, and negotiated with dealers. When I told Noah I was finally ready to look at a new car, he paused. "I'm proud of you," he said, and you could hear the shame, like a weight, still in his chest. "I mean it, Aya." "Thank you," I said. "Your life is messy, so is mine. We'll both rebuild." The truth was, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. Triumph tastes like heat and noise. This felt like cool, clear water settling after a storm. The people who'd mocked me were learning, sometimes painfully, that status could fall away. The people who stayed, Lila, Lydia, Marta, and strangers who became patrons, were grounding me in a different kind of wealth. The fall of my siblings didn't erase the scars of their laughter, but it softened something in all of us. They began to understand the cost of their words. I began to understand the limits of forgiveness. Some lessons come only when the roof caves in. One evening, as Brielle packed a small box to return to Mom's house, she paused by a framed photo of us as girls, grinning with paint on our faces. She picked it up, fingers trembling. "Remember this?" she asked, voice small. I smiled through a wash of old memories. "Yeah, we were brave then," she nodded. "I want to be brave now." Maybe she would be, maybe she wouldn't. That wasn't for me to decide. I could only offer a hand, steady, careful, and honest about where my boundaries lay. Outside, my old Civic sat under the streetlight, its paint dull but familiar. I walked over, ran my hand over the hood, and felt the grooves where I'd once leaned during nights of crying. "We're almost there," I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The morning I signed the papers, the world felt a little surreal. The dealer smiled like he was presenting a prize. "Congratulations, Ms. Rivera," he said, handing me a small leather folder and a key fob that felt impossibly heavy in my palm. The Tesla gleamed under the showroom lights like a promise. Its doors closed with a soft, confident whisper. I ran my fingers over the cool surface. It wasn't just metal and battery. It was the echo of nights I'd spent saving coins, teaching kids, painting until my hands cramped. The jar on my dresser had become a down payment. My art had become a lifeline. I thought of Dad's note taped to the back of that old canvas. "Dreams don't die, Ayanna. People just stop watering them." I had watered mine, drop by drop. "Drive safe," the salesman said. "You earned it." I tucked the folder into my bag and slid behind the wheel. The inside smelled like leather and newness, a different kind of clean. I felt a little guilty for enjoying something that had once been used as a punchline. But guilt and joy can coexist. I let both sit with me. That night was the family gathering. Not a party, but a Sunday dinner. Mom had invited everyone, probably because the spreadsheets and legal calls had quieted and she wanted us to see each other without the pressure of perfection. I arrived later than the rest, heart fluttering with nerves I hadn't expected. I parked at the end of the driveway and stepped out. The Tesla's LED lights created a soft halo on the pavement. Noah came to the door and froze when he saw me. For a second, the way he looked was like the old days, before sarcasm had hardened him. Open, surprised, a little ashamed. "Aya," he said, voice low. "That's... wow." "You like it?" I asked, keeping my voice even. I didn't want to gloat. The car wasn't proof to anyone, it was proof to myself. He flailed for words. "You earned it. I'm proud of you." His pride sounded sincere and small, which made it truer. We walked inside together. The living room smelled like roasted rosemary and lemon. Brielle looked up from the couch, and her jaw dropped. Not theatrically, but genuinely. For once, there was no snark behind her expression, only surprise and something like regret. Mom came over and hugged me. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Her voice caught, and for the first time in years, I could hear how difficult pride was for her, how afraid she'd been to celebrate me for fear of stoking old rivalries. We sat. For a long moment, no one said anything. The old furniture seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting to see what would happen now that the script had changed. Brielle cleared her throat. "Ayanna," she began, I'm proud of you." Her voice was small, but it was there. "I'm trying to be better." "You've said that before," I replied, gentle but honest. "Saying it isn't the same as doing it." "I know," she said, looking down. "This time I mean it." Noah reached over and squeezed her hand. "We both do." The conversation turned slowly to ordinary things. The kids' latest school projects. Mom's new neighbor, the handyman who fixed the fence. It felt good, mundane and safe in a way truth rarely is. After dinner, we stepped out into the cool night. I placed my hand against the Tesla's hood. It was smooth and perfect, sure, but my touch slid over a different surface in my memory. The cool, dented metal of my old Civic. The place where I'd cried and vowed to keep going. I reached into my bag, pulled out a small wrapped canvas, the painting I'd done of the little silver car under a stormy sky, and held it out. "For you," I said. "A reminder." Brielle took it with trembling hands. She looked at the brushwork, at how the storm bled into the horizon. "It's powerful," she whispered. I watched her for a long time. "I painted it when I thought about leaving," I said. but staying didn't mean staying small. It meant growing where I was planted. She looked up at me then, tears pooling. I didn't know you felt so much of that on your own. Her voice was raw. I'm sorry. You don't get to erase the past, I said, honest. But you can change the future. She nodded. I will. Noah came closer. Aya, I want to ask you something. He hesitated, then spoke plainly. Would you help me teach a workshop on storytelling through design? Not as a favor, as a collaboration. I want to learn how to build something that matters with someone who actually sees it. His humility was a small gift. I'll do it, I said. But we do it right. We involve the kids. We make it about community, not image. He smiled, relieved. Deal. Mom wrapped her arms around both of us. It's been a long time since I felt hopeful, she said. Hope is a peculiar thing. It's not a single moment, but a collection of small choices. The way Brielle stayed and cleaned out a bank account instead of running away. The way Noah asked for help without pretending. The way Mom finally said the words that mattered. My new car sat at the end of the driveway, bright and silent, but the real change was quieter, in the way we talked, the way we listened. Later that night, I climbed into the Tesla, feeling the soft glow of the dashboard like a new constellation. I thought of my old Civic, parked under a streetlight a few blocks away, paint chipped and faithful. I pictured it in my mind and smiled. I started the car and glided out of the driveway. The electric hum was different, no roar, no sputter, just a calm, confident whisper forward. As I drove through the familiar streets, lights blurred into streaks. And for the first time in a long time, the act of moving forward felt unburdened by the weight of proving. I pulled over at a quiet hill overlooking the town. The city lights winked below like a scatter of coins. I rested my hand on the steering wheel and thought of all the nights I'd sat in some other car, feeling invisible. Those nights had changed me, but they did not define me. I picked up my phone and opened a new photo. The painting of the old car, framed, illuminated on my wall. I took a picture of it and sent it to Brielle with a short message. We can fix things. It doesn't have to be fast to be true. Her reply came almost immediately. I'll try. Thank you. I sat back and let the hum of the Tesla cradle me. My chest loosened. The drive home felt like a quiet victory, not a shouted triumph. I wasn't proving anything to them. I was showing up as myself. As I turned the keyless ignition off and the interior light dimmed, a small thought nudged me. A reminder that healing is uneven, that forgiveness is a process, and that the next step would require patience and patience alone. I smiled into the dark and whispered, We've come a long way. I sit in my studio at night and let the city hum around me like a distant lullaby. The room smells of turpentine and tea, a combination that used to make my father smile. The painting of the old Civic hangs on the wall now, framed and bright, every dent rendered with affection, every scrape a brushstroke of history. People ask if buying the Tesla changed me. The short answer is no. The longer answer is yes, but not in the way everyone expects. The car itself is only metal and circuitry. What changed was the permission I gave myself to step into a life I'd quietly built, piece by piece. The Tesla is a signpost, not the summit. My relationship with my siblings is different now. We talk, sometimes awkwardly, sometimes tenderly. Noah calls more often, not always with questions about work, but with honest check-ins. Brielle volunteers at the community center on Saturdays, painting murals with kids who don't have much but have a lot of colors in their voices. Mom comes by my studio sometimes, bringing tea and asking about my next show. The apologies we owe each other are old and slow, but they exist. We use them like tools. Forgiveness felt impossible during the first months after the dinner. I remember the nights of doubt, the tears in my car, the way I questioned every choice. But forgiveness isn't a single act. It's a landscape you cross step by step. Sometimes it's a text that says, I'm thinking of you. Sometimes it's a shared cup of coffee. Sometimes it's a small, obedient kindness that says, I will try. I thought success would settle everything, that money or recognition would silence the past. It didn't. The more I achieved, the more I realized real healing comes from steadiness. Showing up, setting boundaries, asking for respect. Those things are quieter than a trophy, but heavier and truer. My students have been the truest mirror through all of this. One little girl, Rosa, brought me a crumpled drawing last week. It was a scribble of a car and a stick figure behind the wheel. You fixed it, she said proudly. I put the drawing on my fridge. It's tiny, imperfect, And it makes me brave when the old doubts whisper that none of this mattered. I still visit my old Civic sometimes. It sits in a friend's driveway, steady and used. I wipe the dust from the hood and remember nights I spent there, planning, crying, deciding. Those memories are not shameful. They are maps. They show me where I came from and how the small, stubborn choices added up. When Brielle first asked for help after everything fell apart, I wrestled with the right thing to do. It would have been easier to turn her away, to let the ledger of hurts stay balanced. But building a life isn't just about keeping score. It's about offering a hand when you can and letting people prove they can change. That doesn't mean I let her off the hook. We made terms. She worked at my workshops. She learned budgeting. She showed up. Sometimes she failed. Sometimes she surprised me. That honesty taught me how to be compassionate without enabling. People love a neat ending. They want a moment where the villain gets their due and the hero stands on a hill with wind in their hair. Life isn't tidy like that. Poetic justice often arrives in small moments: a late apology, a returned kindness, a child painting without fear. Those are the payoffs that keep me telling this story. I learned that dignity is not a thing someone gives you. It's a thing you claim, slowly and stubbornly. It's in the way you hold your head when the room wants to shrink you. It's in the money you set aside for your future. It's in the lines you refuse to let others cross. There are still times when old voices echo. A joke at a dinner, a smug caption on social media. Those moments sting, but they do not define me. I have friends who remind me of my worth, students who call me Ms. A, and a studio that smells like possibility. My work continues. I paint, and people respond. Sometimes a patron buys a piece, and sometimes a neighbor hangs my mural in their store. Each small response is like a note in a larger song. If I could say one thing to my younger self, it would be this: keep watering it. Keep showing up. The world will not always see you, but that doesn't mean you are not growing. Your worth is not tied to someone else's applause. The last time I drove the Civic, I took it up to the ridge before dawn. The engine coughed and then hummed, and the first light caught the scratches and made them glow. I sat there as the sky turned from black to a soft blue and thought of all the small choices that brought me here. The jar of coins, the murals, the nights of painting until my hands ached. I realized that I had not been carrying shame, but a story. That car had been a vessel for perseverance. Later, I sold the Civic to a young man who needed a cheap car to get to his new job out of town. He cried when I handed him the keys, grateful and nervous. I told him, "Take care of her. She'll take care of you." He laughed and promised to paint a rust design on the door, like a badge of honor. As for the Tesla, I still drive it, but mostly I drive to teach. I fill the back seat with canvases and brushes and kids whose eyes light up at color. The car is useful, yes, but it's also a part of a larger life I built from small, stubborn steps. They taught me love was conditional, and that hurt. But what I learned after that was more important. Peace doesn't need permission. It grows from choices you make when no one is watching, from the courage to stand for yourself gently, and from the willingness to let others learn their lessons without becoming the tools of their downfall. When I close my studio for the night, I flip the lights off, and the painting of the Civic catches the last glow from the streetlight. I stand there a moment, hands in my pockets, and whisper to the room, "We kept going." Outside, the town breathes. Inside, my heart does too. I am not the same girl who drove that old car into Brielle's driveway that night. I am more patient, more careful, and perhaps most importantly, kinder to myself. And if anyone asks what the moral of this story is, I say simply, tend your life like a garden. Water it, protect it, and when the storms come, trust that the roots you've grown will hold. They taught me love was conditional. I learned peace doesn't need permission. It's been 3 years since that night at Brielle's house, 3 years since the laughter that broke something in me, and the silence that forced me to rebuild from the pieces. Time has a strange way of reshaping pain. It doesn't erase it, it just rounds the edges until you can hold it without bleeding. My studio is busier now. The walls are lined with color and story, every painting a fragment of someone I used to be. Some are stormy and jagged, others calm and golden. People come in and see art. I see chapters. Last month, the local museum hosted a small exhibit titled Still Waters, the Art of Ayana Rivera. When I stood there on opening night, I felt both proud and small. Proud because my journey hung on those walls. Small because I knew how much of it had been built on stubborn survival. The piece that drew the most attention wasn't the grand landscape or the abstract sky. It was $5,000 car, the painting of my old Civic parked under a heavy sky, headlights dim but unwavering. It was the story that had started everything. A young girl stood in front of it for a long time. She was maybe 10, hair in a braid, holding her mother's hand. She looked up at me shyly and asked, "Why did you paint a broken car?" I smiled. "Because it kept moving," I said. She nodded seriously, as if that made perfect sense. "My mom's car is old too, but she says it's strong." "Then your mom is right," I told her. "Strong things don't always shine. They just don't stop." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Thank you," and they walked away. That one exchange felt like every apology I'd never received, answered in kindness instead. Noah and I run workshops together now. Design with heart. He handles the tech and branding side. I guide the storytelling. We host kids from the community center, teaching them how art and design aren't about perfection, but about meaning. He jokes sometimes about the past, carefully, respectfully. "Remember when I thought I knew everything?" he'll say. And I'll smile and reply, "You still do, just not about people." It's our quiet truce. Brielle has changed too. She still wears her confidence like jewelry, but there's humility in her now, the kind that only comes after losing what you thought defined you. She runs small art therapy classes at Mom's church. Sometimes she sends me photos of the kids' work, messy, beautiful chaos. Each message ends with the same words, "You were right." Mom, she's softer now. We've both grown used to sitting in the same silence that once hurt so much. But now it's a peaceful silence, the kind that says everything has finally been said. She still keeps Dad's old canvas in her hallway, the one with the note on the back. Sometimes when I visit, I find her staring at it, smiling through her wrinkles like someone who's made peace with the ghosts. As for the Tesla, it's just a car now. I drive it to my workshops, to grocery stores, to the coast when I need air. Sometimes when the light hits the windshield just right, I can almost see the reflection of my old Civic behind it, loyal, patient, brave. I like to think they represent different parts of me, one that endured, one that arrived, both necessary. Every year, on the anniversary of Dad's passing, I drive out to the ridge, where he used to take me as a child. It's quiet there, just wind, tall grass, and the hum of distant traffic. I park the car, step out, and sit with my sketchbook. The first year after the dinner, I couldn't bring myself to draw anything. Now I fill pages, mountains, roads, skies with stubborn light. I always end the session by writing one line at the bottom of the page. "Thank you for teaching me to stay." Because that's what this journey really was. Not about leaving pain behind, but learning to stay with it until it transformed. People often ask how it feels, the poetic justice, the karma everyone seems to love. But karma isn't punishment. It's truth finding its way home. It's Noah calling to ask for help instead of pretending he doesn't need it. It's Brielle painting with children instead of posing for strangers. It's Mom defending me when someone jokes at my expense. It's me no longer breaking when I remember the laughter, because I finally know who I am without their approval. The true revenge wasn't success. It was peace. Peace that stayed even when the noise stopped. I stand now in front of my newest painting, an unfinished piece I've been working on for weeks. It shows two cars on a long stretch of road at sunset, one old, one new. The road between them is blurred, like memory itself. I dip my brush in gold, trace the final stroke across the horizon, and step back. The light hits it perfectly, two paths converging under a sky that looks forgiving. I smile and whisper, "Full circle." Then I sign my name in the corner, Ayanna Rivera. Not the girl who drove a $5,000 car, not the woman who bought a Tesla, just me, the artist, the teacher, the survivor who turned every wound into color. As the last of the daylight fades, I lock the studio and glance at the old Civic painting one more time. Its headlights glow faintly in the brushwork, pointed toward a horizon that never ends. I turn off the light, and the room falls into quiet. And in that quiet, I hear my father's voice, soft, sure, eternal. "Keep going, Aya," I nod, whisper back, "always."